What you need, and you guys watch my channel. Let me start off with the political statements, get that out of the way, and then we can move on to other things. Now, a lot of people, and especially the major media outlets, are claiming that Donald Trump shouldn't contest the elections and the results, and that he should announce, um, you know, that he's out of the race, that he lost. I'm a very honest guy, so I'm going to give you my honest perspective. Donald Trump contesting the results of the elections is well within his rights, and it's very important that he does so because of his claims of fraud in the election and people trying to steal it. It's very important that he's allowed to contest certain states and have recounts. I will explain to you guys why. The first reason is that according to the laws of the states, if there is a lead of less than 1% of the vote, then a recount is in order. Now, if the lead is, I believe, less than, I think it's what is it, 0.6 or something like that percent, then no money is necessary by the person who's challenging to get the recount. But if it's more than a certain amount, that's less than 1%, clearly less than 1%, a recount is in order. Now, if it's more, you have to pay for it. Donald Trump can challenge because this is part of the democratic process. So there are several states, which are marginal states, Pennsylvania, I believe Georgia. I don't think Pennsylvania, actually. Yeah, I think Pennsylvania as well. Georgia, I think some other state, I can't remember which one it is. But there are about 3 or 4 states where the margin between Joe Biden's lead and Trump, even though Joe Biden has taken over, is 1%. Therefore, it is within Donald Trump's rights to contest the election in terms of contest those states and have recounts. Okay, I believe Pennsylvania is one as well. He's well within his rights to do so. And the more he tests the democratic process, the more he tests the system, the better. It will show how robust the democratic process is. It'll show how robust the system is. So it's well within his rights to do so. We know, I believe, that Joe Biden has won this election, just looking at the results that I've seen. But it is well within Donald Trump's rights to challenge that and to scrutinize it to its fullest. I have no problem with that. And I think none of us should. And it's really unethical and wrong for him for people to say that he should stop talking about it and not challenge it, and he should declare Biden the winner. That's ridiculous. Like, no one has ever done that. Okay? No one. Every single election, when there's a state that is close and marginal, they request a recount and the recounts begin. So that's protocol. Okay? Now, another thing I saw was that, these other channels are speaking about the fact that Fox is not declaring Joe Biden the winner, even though he may get past 270 votes. They're not going to call him president-elect. They will declare and they will report that he's got past 270 votes, but they will not declare him president-elect. Again, that's their call. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that because they're going to be doing recounts. So they're not Sure, but what they can say is apparently from the voting process so far, these are the votes that Joe Biden has had. And if they choose to not report him as president-elect because there are pending recounts going on, it's well within their their company to do so. Okay, I don't understand why people would vilify them for that. Again, fair, free elections. Let the democratic process play out. Let the system be tested. I think that's something that I think is only fair. And it'll take a little while, but what? So what? Like, whoever the president's going to be, right? That person's going to be put into office next year. Okay? This is not going to drive people nuts. It's not going to drive people crazy. Just do it over again. Now it's more work for all these hardworking people out there who have been counting the ballots. But guess what? Guess what? Sometimes that has to happen for the interest of democracy, that everyone doesn't question it. So it needs to play its course out the right way. And if there are discrepancies, then it's a good thing the recounts. In other words, what I'm saying is, let the process go through to its maximum. Democracy here is on trial. It's not. Good morning, J-Ho Mamalas. Democracy is on trial here. It's not about Biden. It's not about Trump. It's about, does the process work rigorously? If you rigorously test it, does it? Right? That's important. And I'm glad, in a way, that Donald Trump is doing this. And everybody else should be too. Patience is a virtue. A lot of people want Donald Trump to win, and a lot of people don't want him to win. We understand it. But if you look at the atmosphere in the United States of America, it's a lot of people on both sides. People have to get to terms with what is true and what is not. A lot of people right now are very skeptical about everything going on in the world. And they want to know at least that the processes, because everything on every turn of democracy has been challenged. And the processes now, people want to know that those processes are true. And the people carrying out these processes are people like you and me. They're everyday Joes counting these votes right now. It's not automated, right? So if the people are doing the counting of the votes, what all we want to know is that they're not cheating, that these people are not cheating, and that's it. Okay? So let the process go to its completion. I don't like when media try to push certain narratives. Once again, that is the problem. I had to go to Fox to see what they were seeing, because I knew they were diametrically opposed to the general sentiment of what general media says. I'm looking for all kinds of weird media outlets to go look at the information so I can get an unbiased view, because the bias is ridiculous. It's ridiculous the other way. I can't go to ABC. I can't go to CNN. I can't go to NBC. I can't go to ABC. They're tremendously biased towards Biden. Cautious but biased. Implicit bias. And the majority of stations are owned by Disney. Right? So all I'm going to say the same thing. And Fox now has been bought by Disney. So Fox kind of, they're mandated. And if you really look at Arizona, all right, I've just been looking at analytics, and I just got to tell you guys the truth. I'm not here to, no matter how I feel about it, I got to tell you the truth. Arizona was not Biden's territory yet Fox had claimed it for Biden. I guess based on how it was trending, but you never know. You never know how things can go. And Arizona is still trending for Biden as far as I can see. I'm looking at the Associated Press, particularly AP, because the Associated Press wouldn't have any bias particularly. I also look at other things like Fox and all the left wing, all the right wing outlets to see what they're saying, because their claim is that the elections are being robbed, and they have certain little particles of they doctorate but factoids nonetheless, right? Which say that this is being there is charges out there that there's fraud going on. All right, to build up a claim for the president. Now, regardless of whether you believe it or don't, it is irrelevant. You see? Do I think that there's widespread fraud in this election? Obviously not. If there was widespread fraud, that means from state to state, we would be seeing something totally different. Widespread fraud. Do I fraud in every single election? Absolutely. You can't say that the election is 100% fraud free. That's ridiculous. And that's what the media houses are saying. And that's where Trump will have a case somewhat, if he could find evidence for that and bring it to the courts. He has to find it, though. And that's going to be hard to do, because you're talking about millions and millions of people and finding that anomaly that's sufficient to influence millions and millions of people or to change an outcome. So I don't know how he's going to find it, but the point is, regardless of that, he's going to get recounts. And that's the important thing. On to something else. And it's a close election. Let's not make it sound like it's not. It's a close election. I mean, ultimately, in the end, I think that Joe Biden's going to win 2-3 more states than Donald Trump will, and by some significant margins. But that's irrelevant to the situation. Just looking at the trending, you can see what's really going to go on, how it's ultimately going to end. But having said that, why not engage Trump and show him how transparent you are? In fact, in certain states, both Biden and Trump supporters can stay about, I think in Philadelphia particularly, you can stay about 6 feet away from the people who are actually dealing with the ballots in certain counties are still outstanding. So all I'm saying is, by allowing the process to be transparent, allowing you have your security there to make sure that people don't get out of hand, but by allowing the process to be as transparent as possible, that's the way how you put democracy on display. And you show how democracy truly works. And remember, the majority of people who carry out democracy are people like you and me. They're the ones counting the ballots. They're the ones, it's the middle class, even the lower class. They are the people doing the hard labor, right? It's you and me. So if you have faith in you and me to do the right thing, to not be compromised, to do the damn job, to be good at your job, regardless of who else is gonna come out there and be the winner. If you believe that, then that's what counts, right? It's people just like you and me who do the counting once it's not automated. And if they do their job, if they have pride in their job and they do their job correctly, then the result will be transparent. But if you and I fail to do our job correctly and we go with the bias of the networks and the television stations, I told you, you and I have the power. We're the people who do the work. We are the ones who actually make differences. It's not those guys up in their high towers. It's not the politicians. It's not the media. It's not those guys. They try to influence you and me, but we are the people who do the work. Don't let them fool you. It's the guy down the street from you who's in that polling booth trying to figure out the votes. Not figure out, but count them. All he has to do is count. That's all his job is, just to count. That's all he's doing. He doesn't care How it swings, ultimately, that's not up to him. His thing's just to count and make sure the ballots are proper. And that's all to it, man. So at the end of the day, if Trump wins, great, good for him. But one thing we do know is, or Biden, good for both of them. All right. At the end of the day, it's about the process working and working well. And that's what we got to make sure happened. And if Donald Trump is contesting it, let him contest. Let him execute to completion. Don't put pressure on him. Let him see the ultimate end result of what it is. Let him contest to the hilt. Let him go as far as he wants to go. And let the recounts happen. And if he wants to go through the courts, let him go through the courts. There is time. Let him explore and exploit every single option. Let democracy be tested to its hilt. It's important. It's important. Now we will see. See, the enemies of democracy wanted to fall. And the enemies of democracy tried to use certain people as tools against it. And now is the time for the revelation of democracy and how good it works or how good it doesn't work. It's about to be put to the acid test. It's been challenged throughout Donald Trump's reign. We've heard that, the protective bodies and the investigative bodies have been compromised and they're corrupt. We've seen the police service being put under scrutiny as if it is corrupt. The police service is not corrupt. Not to the extent to which so many people's lives are saved by police. Come on now. We need police. We always do. But there's a significant portion of the police, maybe about 5%, maybe 1%, maybe 2%, who are corrupt. And that bunch of the police service and even certain systematics, how it works, give the tremendously bad label to the service that does so much good. In my country, again, same thing. Different day in terms of race and minorities and people at risk areas, but the same thing. It's not the majority of the service that is corrupt. It never is. Otherwise, we'd have all kinds of corruption going on daily. You understand? There would be no law and order. It would be run as if it's a mafia or something, the whole place. No, the majority of the police service is not corrupt. Okay? However, there's a significant portion of people in the police service at high levels and so on, just like everywhere in the world, which are corrupt and they have different agendas. And sometimes police officers who don't like what's happening have to go along with those agendas, even though they don't like what's happening, because that's the culture that these particular people have set in certain precincts. You have to understand these things. And now you have to understand how to go after the key people who are creating this culture of corruption. And it comes in various forms. Training Day was a perfect example of such, where a culture was set. And whether you're talking about racist police, whether you're talking about corrupt police who are involved in underground dealings, whether you're talking about undercover police who have to appear as if they're corrupt police under the guise of watching to see and monitor people, you have to understand that the majority of police are not like that. They're just there to do their job, and most of them do it quite well because they're proud to do their job. They're proud to carry their badge. But yes, there are a significant portion of police out there who are up to no good. They really are. And they have issues with their lives and how they feel about themselves, and they take it out on other people. No doubt about that. And there are way too many of them. Even though they're not the majority, there are way too many of them. So I understand, but we need police. People talk about, oh, the world without police. No, you kind of do need police. You need somebody to apprehend people and carry them in when they commit crimes. Otherwise, you're going to have people commit crimes, and they ain't just not going to worry about nothing because there's nobody to check them. Right? So we have to be reasonable. We must be sensible. We must be grounded when we talk about these things. And there's nothing wrong with talking about politics. A lot of people say it's taboo. No, we can have a reasoned conversation about politics. And we don't have to agree with everything that everybody says. We can have a reasonable argument on these things, just as we have a reasonable argument about boxing. We can have a reasonable argument about racism. We can have a reasonable argument about corruption. We can have a reasonable argument about labor. We can talk about religion. We can talk about anything. We can. Just be civil about it. You can be even emotional about it, but be civil at the end of the day. We know certain things are trigger points for people. That doesn't mean we can't have a discussion about it. We have to have it. These are issues and stuff that we need to talk about. If we are to get along together, we have to talk about these things. Ultimately, you and me were about 99.99999999999% the same. It's that 0.000000001% that makes us different. Okay? And we make a big deal about it, obviously, genetically and otherwise. It gives a different phenotype and all of that. But essentially, the spirit of you and I are the same. We're the same. You want the same fundamental things. Everybody does. That's why music appeals to everybody. That's why sports appeals to everybody, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? So ultimately, we're the same. If I never saw you, you never saw me, and we were having a discussion, and we agreed on something, you would never know that who I am, and I would never know who you you were. We all have our challenges and problems, but at the end of the day, we all think about the same. What I mean by that is we're not identical thinkers, but what I mean is the processes that allow us to think and reason are the same processes. We transmit the same telepathic signals. We have the capacity to receive the same sort of knowledge. We have the ability to communicate several different ways, and so on and so on and so on. Because we are part of what is known as Homo sapiens, aka the human race. J. Homelmaz HD says, facts, but the problem is that the majority of people are way too emotional and immature to have a mature conversation if you differ with their opinion. This is true. I agree. It's one of those things where dealing with people, because they're so emotionally charged and so emotionally attached to certain things, they find it very difficult to talk about it. But it is discussions like these that are very important for us to realize how similar we are. Okay? Everybody talks about rednecks and hillbillies, and you know what that is? They call country folk. They're called country folk. Stop it. Stop ridiculing people who are from the countryside. They're country folk. I don't get it. Like we make fun of people, rednecks and hillbillies, and everybody knows that those guys are actually the guys who supply the majority of the food to the world. They're the people who the food we're eating is because of them. So how the hell are we gonna make fun of the people the hardworking people who be bringing all the food and all of the certain supplies to us. I don't get it. They have a significant role in the United States of America. Everybody always makes fun of the country boys. Why? Whether you black or white, because of your slang or whatever, they want to call you country boy. Oh, he from the country, we from the city. What that supposed to mean? And then you expect them not to vote for Trump? At least he gets them. Because they got principles. Whether you agree with them or not, they're principled people. But people can't see that. We've counted out and we've called the country folk racist and we called them trash. It is wrong. That is wrong. That's not, they are your suppliers. They supply most of your food. While you sitting down in the city buying oranges and all that shit, what do you think? What for Florida? Orange juice, crying out loud. All the corn you use worldwide comes from country folk who cultivate the corn. What is wrong with you people? Like everybody always has this, and then they want to tell the country folk, oh, you talk about you believe in God, but you carry guns. Come on, man. We got to grow up. Country folk, at least they know God. I'm not saying that those of you who are atheists who don't believe in God, that's a bad thing. I'm just saying they got some sort of moral compass. They got principles. Y'all feel country folk simple people. Not necessarily. Some of the best scholars, some of the best people in the world. Joe Biden's a country boy. Anybody talking about Joe Biden's a country boy? He come from the country. You see what I'm saying? So Donald Trump at least got that. He understood the poor folk and the country folk, and just because you're from the countryside don't mean you're poor. But the poor folk and the country folk will vote for him because finally he represent, or at least he acknowledged them and he represented them. Okay? Until we wake up and realize that the world is not just what we know and our culture and our way of life, we'll always be victimizing people and not understanding them. We'll always be targeting people and putting them down instead of trying to understand that they're cool people and you actually need them. I heard somebody say, oh, these racist white people, we need to get rid of them. Why don't they go back to Europe? I was like, God damn it, then you ain't gonna have no food. Guess who's raising the food? The same people who had the slaves on the planet, now they got technology. And they raising food. If you kick them back up to Europe, guess what? You ain't gonna have no damn food. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of we feel we could just cut ties with people, not understanding those same people you need them. So the sooner we learn that ethnic cleansing is the dumbest thing you could possibly do, because first of all, you're killing your brothers and sisters, but on top of that, that you're actually crippling your state, because those people contribute something to the state. They're assets to the state, and they help the state in some way, shape, or form. So, you know, when you guys go represent yourselves in the Olympics and shit, or you go up in a sport and you're all proud to say, I'm from Russia, or I'm from Ukraine, or I'm from, well, guess what? Y'all united then because you got to compete against somebody else. Isn't that some of the funniest, dumbest things I've ever seen? If people go into war, all of a sudden, skin color don't mean nothing. But as soon as the war is over, and you're not you versus them, you start dividing each other again. Oh, I'm better than you. Oh, I'm better than you. It's just like civil rivalry is really dumb. It's retarded, except something there for real. It's retarded. Like, I never understood this stuff. all Americans, time to go to war, right? All of a sudden, it doesn't matter what kind of American you are, what your complexion is or anything, they want you. You know what I'm saying? But once you don't got no more use, now seriously, we need to grow up. We need to grow up. And you know what's so cool? America is one of the coolest places. You got so many different accents and so many different parts of America. It's so cool. That's why a lot of people outside of America find America very interesting. You know what I mean? And it's like big countries in the world. If you go Australia, you go Russia, there's the different types of people and different types of accents and how these people survive in these conditions. Like for sure, I can't survive in Alaska. I'm a Florida boy. You know what I mean? I gotta go down to Miami, baby, where it's hot, right? And yet, in the same country, you could ask somebody up in Alaska, it's cold, a guy who's black just like me, and he's coming out barefooted and he's bareback in the cold. And I'm looking at him like, you nuts, ninja. That's what's so cool about the place. It was the first place I ever saw black white people. It's crazy. It's crazy. I always talk about that. It looks like a white woman. I remember the lady like yesterday. Her son looked like that kid, the basketball player from Oakland. He's got blue eyes, blonde hair, and he's fair. But she was goddamn. I thought she was white until she started talking. Then I said, "Oh my God, is she white or is she black?" They told me that's what you call a white black woman. It's messed up. I'm telling you now, man, it's messed up out there. It's crazy. And to me, that's beautiful. I don't understand how we can't be inclusive of everybody and get along. Anyway, that was that. Now, on to the next thing I want to talk about. And it's important the media stops being so biased. It's very important because people actually rely on news, but now they can't even rely on news when they realize that the news outlets are very biased. And it's stupid. And why do people have to go looking online? You can't even watch television anymore without hearing crap. We need fair, unbiased reporting, not people telling us they're unbiased. Fair, unbiased reporting, regardless of what the guy's done to your media outlet, regardless of what he said about you. Don't strike back. You are the reporting channel. Report on what's said and let the other people analyze things and stuff. But you can't have a vendetta against people and then think you're going to be unbiased about stuff. All right, let's talk about something else. So I was watching EJ Boxing Live, and he had this feature called Haters, and one guy said that BWF should be a higher ranked pound for pound fighter. I think the guy's name is Jalik. He said that BWF should be a higher ranked pound for pound fighter, and now Inui. And I was watching, we had unbiased. I think unbiased boxing was on there. I think pound for pound boxing report was on there. The Fight Doctor was on there with EJ. And immediately after he reiterated he reiterated twice. He thought that BWF was a much better boxer than Niall Inui. Now, first and foremost, quick disclaimer, I had Niall Inui in the top 10 pound for pound list that I had. I did not have Artur BWF. I based it on particular criteria. I based it on their accomplishments. I also based it on the level of opposition that they faced. And I had Inui ahead of Artur BWF. I actually had him ranked in my pound for pound list at number 3. Now, having said all of that, I can make a case for why Jalik is correct. But to do so, I must preface it with a context. I do believe that Jalik is looking at an eye test, and he's also looking in terms of styles. This is the basic claim that Jalik uses, and I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So, for example, Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez. Some people believe that Terrence Crawford is the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, and Canelo is not. But they're not going by the accomplishments that Canelo has versus Terrence Crawford has. Terrence Crawford also did not face the level of opposition that Canelo has that he had, right? So when we're looking at Terrence Crawford versus Canelo and somebody saying that Terrence Crawford is pound for pound higher than Canelo, we're looking at from the eye test, particularly, and we're also probably looking at it from, not just his performances, but how strong Terrence Crawford is, etc., etc. Now, why this is important, why you must know the criteria under which you're prefacing your analysis is because you must be able to contextualize so that when people question it, it can question you on the lines of your context and not outside the lines of your context, which is what Jalik did not do. He did not specify specifically what he meant. And he started engaging these guys as they swarmed him. And they never allowed him to really articulate what he had to say. They kept on interrupting him. And they kept on going back to accomplishments, particularly. Now, accomplishments are very important because it shows how much your skills have been tested, how much your style has been tested, how much your IQ and strength, etc., has been tested. So I understand where they were coming from. And I think they couldn't get to understand what Jalil was saying because they never really gave him the opportunity to finish articulating what he was saying. And I thought that this happens a lot where a lot of guys just get very emotional. Hey, shout out to EJ Boxing Live. Yes, sir. I'm actually talking about your recent post that you put out there. And I think the guy's name is Jalik. And his comments on it. And I'm glad that you got wind of this. And so I'm going to continue talking about this because I think that actually your channel has brought up something very interesting. And I just want to sort of comment on it because a lot of times, sometimes people assume that what someone is saying is ridiculous. There's an assumption. Again, assumptions are not necessarily the best thing in the world. But I thought that this was a very interesting time to actually speak on Jalil's point. So the point, I preface it, again, I am very specific about context. I'm prefacing it that what he was really arguing on is the style that BWF had, the strength that BWF showed, and his performances against credible opposition, okay? He's looking at BWF in the context of that, the eye test. So he was looking at BWF in the context of the eye test, not so much in terms of his accomplishments per se, because he didn't have a whole lot of accomplishments. He's fought, what, four former world champions, present, future world champions, I think it's four of them, right? If so much. I can give you another example because, this is another thing I need to do, which would be define pound for pound. Pound for pound means if the guys were around about the same size and weight, who would win the fight? Right? That's what pound for pound actually is a hypothetical thing, right? Why that's important is, and why we talk about the eye test, I talked about Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, but I'm going to talk about another peer, Teofimo Lopez and Vasily Lomachenko. And I love to use Teofimo Lopez and Vasily Lomachenko because it's perfect for talking about BWF and Naoya Inoue, okay? Inoue, I think it's anyway, because Naoya Inoue is a multiple weight class, I think 3 divisional weight class champion. And Arthur BWF is just 1 weight class world champion, like Teofimo Lopez. He's unified, just like Teofimo Lopez. Lopez has 1 more extra belt, right? He was a champion when he faced Gvozdyk, who is the guy that actually sent Adonis Stevenson into retirement and almost killed him. And So that was a credible fight against two prime guys in their primes fighting. Now Inui, his best fight was against the old senior Nonito Donaire. Now I want to show you something so you will understand why Jalik actually has a point there. Nonito Donaire was able to take Naoya Inui's punches. He actually damaged Naoya Inui in his fight with a left hook, breaking his eye orbital, and also was able to bring the pressure and heat to Naoya Inui, cutting him off and able to catch him with punches. Now, skilled as Naoya Inui was, he showed some flaws in Naoya Inui's armor, right? And it was a hotly contested fight, very competitive fight. And remember, Nonito Donaire is an older guy. Now, follow me on this. Artur Beterbiev is a very strong, powerful light heavyweight. He's not usual light heavy. Now, look how this. I'm trying to show you similarities here. Nonito Donaire also fought way above bantamweight, right? He got all the way up to featherweight and fought there, right? And he came back down. And Artur Beterbiev has fought all the way up to heavyweight. He was a heavyweight and then worked his way down to light heavyweight. He's a big, tremendously huge, tremendously strong light heavyweight. Let's shrink down Beterbiev to bantamweight. Let's say he was a bantamweight. He would be as strong or stronger than Nonito Donaire. Now, how does Artur Beterbiev handle guys in a clinch? He is rough and rugged. He does not allow you to clinch. In fact, the majority of the damage he does to fighters is when he's in the clinch. Would Inui be able to sustain the damage that Beterbiev would do to him? On top of that, like Donaire, he has heavy hands. He's going to break something on you if he hits you. So when you think about how difficult that fight was for Naoya Inui and what he got damaged and how he had to go through the difficulty of getting through that crucible of Nonito Donaire, it is understandable for Jalil to say that Artur Beterbiev is a guy that he, according to his eye test, ranks above Naoya Inui. And the style that Artur Beterbiev brings to the table, while he's slower, he would be significantly slower than Naoya Inui to some degree. He can box off the back foot, etc. And he would be a problem for Naoya Inui. So I don't really see a problem with his argument based on the eye test. Like I said, Teofimo Lopez doesn't have all this experience that Lomachenko had. But there were two things that made me pick Teofimo Lopez while everybody else was picking Lomachenko. One was I watched his fights, and in the eye test, I saw how he was circling. Styles make fights. He circled the right way, which is towards the power hand of his opponent, taking away the weak side attack. And Teofimo Lopez showed us something else I didn't know, that his jab was really on point as well. Not just his right hand, but his jab to keep Lomachenko occupied in the early rounds so he couldn't throw his jab, so he couldn't work his way as he wanted to. But the point is, you have to look stylistically. I want to say this also to a lot of the older nostalgic heads, because they like to talk about accomplishments. And that's very important. Don't get me wrong. Right? You notice I never disparage, but you sometimes get caught up so much in accomplishments, my good friends, that you do not watch at styles. Styles make fights. And while accomplishments cement a style, you have to look and see, okay, did Roy Jones Jr., for example, or forget Roy Jones Jr., what was the guy's name? The guy we're talking about that he said something about Beterbiev and that guy. What guy was that? It wasn't Roy. It was the guy that Roy faced. That Roy beat. Virgil Hunter. Virgil Hill. All right. And his claim was that Beterbiev would tear up Virgil Hill because Virgil Hill, Roy Jones Jr. hit Virgil Hill to the body. And he was talking on the line of styles. He wasn't talking under the line of how good or how great this guy is with body shots and blah, 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 blah. He wasn't interested in that. He was talking about styles. Styles make fights. And the question you have to ask yourself is, had Virgil Hill ever fought a style like BWF? That's what you have to ask yourself. And because think about it this way. Going into a fight with a fighter, the other fighter who is perfecting his craft and all of that needs to consider the style that the fighter might bring to the table if he has seen him before, right? Even though fighters don't really care about that, but the coaches and trainers who are preparing the fighter with a game plan need to consider the style of the fighter and how strong they are, etc., right? So they go and they watch and they use the eye test to be able to analyze and kind of get a game plan for the fighter. When you're talking about past versus present, and you're talking about one fighter beating the other, it's the same sort of analysis you have to apply, right? If you're talking about the eye test and styles. So when Jalik is speaking, he's not speaking from the context of how great this fighter was and how much accomplishments he was accomplished. He wasn't concerned with that. He was approaching it like, if I had to form a game plan, how does this style fit into that game plan to beat the other guy? Oh, this style actually has the tools to beat that style. Just like how I said, Teofimo Lopez had the tools to beat Lomachenko. And I believe all of the new breed fighters have the style to beat Lomachenko, because they bring certain things to the table. Similarly, he's saying Artur Beterbiev had the skills and styles to beat a Virgil Hill because he brought to the table X, Y, and Z tools, which he mentioned, which was he's very strong. He's relentless in terms of how he boxes. He does not allow guys to clinch. Boxing skills, and even though he does get hit, he doesn't get hit with telling shots that really would knock him out. He doesn't allow for that to happen. He slips punches, etc. He can box on the back foot as well, but he's really heavy-handed. He cuts off the ring very well. These sort of things. So that is where he's coming from. And quite frankly, as great a Hall of Famer as Virgil Hill was, I personally think the same as him. I can see, I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not 100% correct. It could happen that Virgil Hill outboxes him, but I don't see, and Virgil Hill had a great jab and all of that, but I still really, truly believe that Artur Beterbiev, being so big, he's a big lightweight. He's not the small, he's a big lightweight. This is not, Virgil Hill never went all the way up to heavyweight. This guy fought at super heavyweight in the amateurs, okay? This is a big, strong, solid dude who we know he's a smart boxer. We've seen him set up knockouts and set up plays on guys and knock them out. This is a big guy, a very big guy, and he grinds you down and he works the body. He would be a problem. I don't know so much for Roy in his prime. Roy did all kinds of crazy things. So I'm not going to say that he would annihilate Roy Jones Jr. or get him out of there. I don't know. But one thing I do know is, would Roy Jones Jr. really harm him or hurt him as much as people think? I don't know. He's a different kind of fighter. I've not seen a fighter like that. Roy never had to deal with a fighter like that. So I can't say. But what I can tell you is, I can see how, style-wise speaking, Artur Beterbiev could beat Virgil Hill. I can see that. Right? I can see the game plan for that. Unrelenting pressure. Right? And cutting off the ring. Staying low, like that's how Beterbiev is. He stays low and he comes in on you. And he's not going to let Virgil Hill clinch, which means for 12 rounds, or as long as that fight goes, he's going to be bringing the heat like nobody's business. Okay? So I can see how Beterbiev could potentially. Now, the other points, Unbiased Boxing said he thinks that Dmitry Bivol could outbox Artur Beterbiev. Usyk did it in the amateurs, so it's possible. Nobody's saying no. But what I'm saying is, if I had to put my money on Beterbiev or Bivol, I'm not picking Bivol to beat Beterbiev. Not. Styles make fights. Bivol's a mid-range fighter. He's going to have to come inside of that power. He's going to have to come inside of that that danger area to deal with a Beterbiev. That's not a good thing. And remember, like I said before, Beterbiev does not allow you to clinch him. So you're going to be under pressure for 12 rounds. He does not allow you to clinch him. He's physically strong. So I put these points before you because a lot of people say, oh, well, that was outlandish what Jalik said. No, not in a certain context. It is not. It isn't. And a lot of people usually listen to certain statements and they think, especially when it's somebody who's talking from a boxing perspective, they're not used to, and they say this guy's a hater or whatever. Not necessarily. It's just a different perspective. And I think a lot of people, by and large, tend to pigeonhole things into one particular way of looking at it. And especially people who are nostalgic about past boxes, which the nostalgia, as I said before, clouds their judgment. Thomas Hearns against Artur Beterbiev. Who would win? Really? You seriously? Like seriously? You're serious? Artur Beterbiev has been dropped, but he has not been hurt. Flash knockdowns are not included. Okay? And it's just amazing. I can't believe that people actually believe that Thomas Hearns would actually beat Artur Beterbiev. The odds on that are pretty low. Beterbiev is a very, very strong guy. And if you guys felt that he was taking Hearns' punch, what are you going to say about a guy who came down from heavyweight? Come on, man. Like there's certain things that I know Thomas Hearns was a hell of a puncher, a decent boxer. You know, his 1-2 was great and all that. But please don't do that. Don't do that. He'd been topped by a number of different guys. And Iron Barkley wasn't even half. I mean, again, a lot of people are going to say, oh my God, Iron Barkley accomplished much more than Beterbiev. He wasn't solid like Beterbiev. He wasn't strong and solid like Beterbiev. Beterbiev is like iron. Like you could hit him in his body, his head, his arms. He's like iron. Iron Barkley ain't that kind of guy. He's a good boxer, good enough boxer, but styles make fights. And so there's a lot of things that people just don't understand. Barkley would get cleaned. But then again, Barkley came up to, did Barkley fight at cruiserweight? I think he fought at cruiserweight. So he was big enough. What are you talking about? Beterbiev is bigger, just a much bigger, more physical guy than Iron Barkley is. He just is. Okay? He's fundamentally sound. I just couldn't see Barkley surviving Beterbiev. I'm just being honest. Now y'all saying, well, he's overhyping him and blah. Listen, man, I just know my boxing. Okay? I just know my boxing. And as Jalik said correctly, this the dude that's several different layers better than Gennady Golovkin. But again, that's the eye test. Based on actual evidence to support that, there's no practical evidence to support that yet. He just got to keep fighting so he can show you what he really got, and then you guys are going to see. But until then, a lot of you guys are going to keep on saying, well, he ain't really all that. He didn't really face nobody. Well, Teofimo Lopez didn't face nobody, but he beat Lomachenko. Terrence Crawford, he ain't faced the kind of people Canelo faced. But I'm sure a lot of you going to say he would beat Canelo if they was the same size. So, I mean, what are you really saying? And that's the point behind my video. I hope you guys get it. A lot of you guys are very nostalgic people, man. I'm not saying he's shitting. Jalik is not trying to shit on anybody. He's just talking boxes, and they're phenomenal people, and they accomplished a lot, and that's very important. But you guys seem to be stuck in a time warp or something, where you think the best boxers were in the 1980s, or Roy Jones Jr. was the best boxer ever, and these kinds of crazy things. I'm not saying that those guys weren't great. They were, and Roy Jones Jr. even is a great boxer. All right, boxing's come along since those guys. It has, whether you believe it or not, it has come along since then. All right. And While if we're talking about accomplishments, those guys have accomplished quite a lot more than the present guys. If you look at it in terms of eye test and what the new crop of guys bring to the table that you probably never seen before, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I think you need to put that in perspective, especially when it comes to styles as yet. Also, styles make fights, and I think a lot of you guys don't really fully analyze what a person might be saying or where they're coming from. I think that's the problem. A lot of people get caught up, and then you never people articulate what they're saying. If something sounds outlandish to you, then probably you should pay attention. Wait for the person to explain themselves, and when they're done explaining themselves, then. But a lot of y'all just so emotional that y'all just y'all just jump in and start talking, and you don't listen. A lot of y'all don't listen. You're good at talking. You're good at regurgitating what you've learned in boxing. You're good at the status quo bullshit. But you're not good at listening to somebody when they're saying something that's somewhat significant and challenging what you know as dogma or you think is dogma. And that's the problem. Some people challenge other people. Now there are times when somebody's talking a load of shit, no doubt about it, and needs to be corrected because they're trolling. But ultimately, most of the time, when I listen to certain people, I'm listening to their content. I'm listening to what they're saying, what their arguments are. Because if you can't even follow the argument, that's why when I saw EJ put hater or whatever he was putting, I guess it was to get attention or whatever. I started listening. I was like, oh, okay, Jaleel, okay, Jalik, what's this? And I started listening. At first, I'm like, okay, that sounds whack, right? And that's the first thing that went through my mind. That's just whack. How do you mean Peter BF is higher pound for pound than Inui, right? Because I didn't rank him that way. But then I said to myself, hey, let me hear what he's actually saying, right? Because it's important to actually know what the person's saying, right? Where's he coming from? And then I started to realize, oh, this guy's talking from an eye test. Okay. Well, let me think about that. So I was listening to him as he's arguing his point, and I'm saying, oh, okay, I get where you're coming from. Okay. I can see it. Terrence Crawford's one of those guys. He ain't really fought nobody in a while, but the eye test. So all I'm saying to people is, and they got Jaleel go way off target because he managed to say something about I think it was, who was it first? I can't even remember who it was. Then it got to be Roy Jones. Then it went off because what they did was they tried to badger him and hustle him so he wouldn't articulate his point. I see what they was doing. Badgering and hustling and trying to, what they do, what the strategy that most of you guys try to do on here is a whole set of y'all just try to pour down questions on a person. And you try to badger them. So you're trying to bully them as if to say, don't even say that. But people are free to say whatever the fuck they want to say. And you got to be open-minded enough to allow them to say their piece. And that's what You Need channel is going to do. I'm going to allow people to say their piece and talk. When I think something is just ridiculous and not factually sound like a literal fact, and you guys can correct me on it too if it's not factual, then I'm gonna correct you on the factual stuff that we already know is out there. But as to there was this guy who was talking about how I think he was the fight doctor. I think it's the same fight doctor guy. He came on here and saying how Ciano, he was a guy that was out of his prime and he retired at the top of boxing out of his prime. And I was like, dude, that's a stretch. I just let him know. I was like, hey, dude, man, that's a stretch, though. He finished his career, I think in his 20s. I think he was 29. So I and then some other people were saying, well, he had Floyd Patterson was out there, and blah, blah. I was like, what's the other guy's name? Sonny Liston. And I was like, no, they weren't top guys. The top guys he faced. Like these are just factual things, though, right? So I can't agree with stuff that's not factual. That's all I'm saying. And Floyd Patterson was what 16 years old. Come on, man. He won Floyd Patterson actually won the championship when he was 17 years old, or was it 19? One of them. He was a teenager when he won the heavyweight championship of the world against Archie Moore. Right? And that was, I think, 2 years after Rocky had beaten Archie Moore, something like that. I can't remember what it was. But the point is, some things, they're actual facts out there. Like we can't change the narrative of facts. So that's all I'm saying. But other than that, and people do in arguments get their facts wrong. So there's nothing wrong with that either. But my point anyway is that you got to listen to people's arguments first before you could even say anything. A lot of people just jump. They just jump on the argument like, I'm like, wait a minute. I understand where you guys coming from. It sounds crazy, but let's hear what the person has to say first. Maybe they actually make sense. You got to give the person the benefit of the doubt to at least articulate their argument. And then afterwards, you have to look at the facts of the argument first and see if they kind of line up. And then think to yourself, okay, what line is this person coming from? Because at least, or you could ask them, okay. In what sort of way can you articulate what sort of way you mean Bitter BF is a better pound for pound fighter than Inui? Maybe that, because again, whether you put them in the right order or the wrong order, whoever determines what order. I mean, it's his pound for pound list anyway. But however you put them in whatever order you put them in, would be determined by the criteria you put them in. So, I didn't even have Bitter BF on my pound for pound. Not to say that he wasn't a fantastic fighter, that he didn't unify, etc., but just the other guys he was competing against in terms of their accomplishments. I thought that he didn't make the cut, but he could have made the cut. I mean, he's probably on several different people's pound for pound lists anyway. And a lot of people say, well, why do you leave him out? Well, based on what I was considering pound for pound. But if I could see a case where he's even above Inui, that's possible as well. Again, if you're looking at the eye test, it's possible. Not by much. He ain't gonna be ahead of Inui by much, because Inui just done a lot more in the sport than he did. But I could see it from an eye test perspective, I guess. When you match him up, you could see, yeah, he gives Inui all the problems in the world. He give him a hell of a lot of problems. So it's possible. All right, so that's all I had to say about that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I saw EJ Boxing Live came through. I don't know if anybody left any comments. Nope. Just EJ dipping in, Jay Homel Maz, and some other people. And I'll have a debate with people on something else. I think it's something else I wanted to talk about. But I'm going to do that in another video. But what you need to build it, man. Peace.